Hey friends, welcome to Story Orchard, the place where every story helps you learn English in a fun way. Ready for today's tale? Let's begin. The night was calm yet heavy with silence. I remember sitting by the window, staring at the streetlights flickering in the distance, wondering why life always hides more than it reveals. Every person you meet, every smile you see, every warm handshake you feel, it all carries a past, a story that you can't even imagine. And sometimes, the truth of that past is far darker and deeper than anyone dares to admit. This story is about Sarah, a woman whose life looked picture perfect from the outside. She was a devoted wife, a loving mother, and a kind neighbor who always carried a gentle smile on her lips. But behind that smile was a history she had buried, a secret past that refused to stay hidden forever. Sarah's marriage to Daniel was the kind people envied. He was successful, charming, and deeply in love with her. Their home was filled with laughter, their children adored them, and their friends always praised the bond they shared. But the thing about life is, no matter how hard you try to bury your past, one day it comes knocking at your door, demanding to be faced. For Sarah, that moment came one evening when a mysterious letter appeared in her mailbox. At first, she thought it was nothing, maybe a misdelivered envelope, but when she opened it, her hands began to tremble. The words inside weren't just words, they were pieces of her hidden life, fragments of a history she had prayed no one would ever discover. Her heart raced as she read. The letter wasn't signed, but it mentioned names and places only she knew. "Do you think you can escape what you did?" the letter asked. "Your new life may look perfect, but your secret past still lives." She quickly tore it apart and threw it in the trash, hoping it was just a cruel prank. But deep inside, she knew the storm she had been running from was finally catching up. That night, as Daniel laughed with the kids, Sarah sat silently, her smile forced, her mind trapped between past and present. Memories she had buried long ago began to resurface. Painful moments, mistakes, and choices that shaped her life before Daniel ever knew her. But what was this past she was hiding? To the world, Sarah was the perfect wife, but years ago, she was someone else entirely. She wasn't born into comfort or safety. Her childhood was a battlefield of broken homes and shattered trust. Her father was absent, her mother struggled to raise her, and Sarah quickly learned that survival often meant doing things she wasn't proud of. By her teenage years, she had fallen into dangerous circles, people who promised her friendship but dragged her into chaos. Nights filled with reckless choices, days blurred by lies and regrets. But her darkest secret wasn't just about bad decisions, it was about someone she left behind. Someone who once trusted her, someone who got hurt because of her choices. And that wound, buried under years of pretending, was beginning to bleed again. As days passed, more letters arrived, each one sharper, each one digging deeper into her soul. "Does Daniel know who you really are?" one asked. "Do your children know the truth about their mother?" Sarah's hands shook as she hid the letters in a box under her bed. She couldn't let Daniel see them, she couldn't let anyone know. But secrets have a way of growing heavier the longer you carry them. Sarah's nights became sleepless, her smiles became fragile, and Daniel began to notice her drifting away. "What's wrong, love?" he asked one evening, his eyes filled with genuine concern. But Sarah shook her head, forcing another lie, saying she was just tired. Inside, however, her heart screamed with guilt and fear. Then came the moment that changed everything. One evening, as she walked out of the grocery store, she froze. A man was standing across the street, staring at her with eyes that carried both pain and fury. She recognized him instantly. It was Alex. A name she hadn't spoken in years, a face she thought she would never see again. Alex was the ghost of her past, the one person who knew everything. Years ago, they had shared not only a life but also secrets so dark that even speaking about them could destroy everything Sarah had built. Alex wasn't just a memory, he was living proof of the life she had abandoned. And now he was back. Her breath quickened as she rushed home, locking herself in the bathroom, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The face she saw wasn't the calm, graceful woman her family adored. It was the frightened girl who once lived on the edge of mistakes and danger. Alex had found her, and that meant her past was no longer a shadow. It was standing in front of her door, ready to shatter her carefully built world. Sarah had to make a choice. confess the truth to Daniel before someone else did, or continue hiding until the lie consumed her whole life. But confession isn't easy when the truth can break hearts and ruin lives. How do you tell the man who trusts you completely that you are not who he thinks you are? How do you tell your children that the mother they look up to was once someone lost, reckless, and broken? Sarah spent nights debating, her heart at war with her mind. And just when she thought she could handle it, another letter arrived. This time, it wasn't just words. It was a photo. A photo of her and Alex from the past, a night she had buried deep, a night that held the reason for her endless guilt. Someone wasn't just reminding her of her past, they were threatening to expose it. The night Sarah had feared finally came when Alex showed up at her doorstep. She opened the door and froze, her heart pounding so loudly she thought Daniel might hear it from the living room. Alex looked older, worn by years of bitterness, but his eyes still carried the sharp fire of betrayal. "You thought you could just walk away, Sarah," he said in a low voice that carried more pain than anger. "You built a new life while I carried the scars of the old one." Sarah begged him to leave, whispering that her family knew nothing, and that she couldn't let them suffer because of her past. But Alex only smirked, holding up another photo, one that showed Sarah in a moment she had sworn never to speak of again. That evening, Daniel noticed Sarah's pale face and trembling hands. He knew something was wrong, and this time he didn't let her hide. "Sarah, please. I love you. But you're keeping something from me." His voice cracked with desperation, and the children, sensing the tension, stayed quietly in their rooms. Sarah felt her world collapsing. She couldn't hide anymore. So, with tears streaming down her face, she told Daniel everything. The reckless life she once lived, the choices she regretted, the night something went horribly wrong that tied her to Alex forever. She confessed how she had run away from that world, choosing to bury it deep and start over, never intending to hurt anyone again. Daniel sat in silence, his face unreadable, his heart torn between love and shock. For the first time in their marriage, Sarah saw distance in his eyes, and it broke her more than anything Alex could ever do. "Why didn't you trust me with this before?" he finally asked, his voice heavy but calm. Sarah sobbed, saying she was afraid he would see her differently, afraid he would never love her if he knew the truth. Daniel took a long breath and said, "I don't know what to feel right now, but what I do know is that you are not that person anymore. You're the woman who built this home with me, who raised our children, who changed her life. And though your past hurts, I can't erase the love we share." The next day, Daniel confronted Alex, protecting Sarah in a way that reminded her of why she fell in love with him in the first place. Alex demanded money, claiming he deserved something for keeping her secret all these years, but Daniel stood firm. "If you expose her, you expose yourself too," he warned. "You think you'll gain power, but all you'll find is more pain." Alex left with anger boiling in his veins, but Sarah knew his return had forced her to face the truth she had been running from for too long. From that night onward, Sarah chose honesty over fear. She told her children the story in simpler words, not to burden them but to teach them that people make mistakes, and the past doesn't define who you are forever. The children cried, but they hugged her tighter, saying they only knew her as the mother who loved them every single day. And Daniel, though still healing from the shock, never stopped standing by her side. Their marriage didn't break. It bent, it shook, but it held strong because of love and resilience. Sarah learned that secrets are like shadows. No matter how far you run, they follow until you finally turn around and face them. And when she did, she realized the truth didn't destroy her life. It freed her from the prison of fear. Her past was no longer a chain. It was a scar, yes, but also a reminder of how far she had come. The family she thought she might lose became her greatest strength. And the woman who once lived in fear finally lived in peace. Thanks for listening with Story Orchard. Hit subscribe, share your thoughts below, and let me know where you're watching from. I love reading your comments.